All right, welcome back, everyone. This is another podcast episode of Film Audit. We're just, again, as we always say, we're just four college students, really good friends, and we're just here to talk about film and just our opinions and thoughts on them. So to begin, I'm going to be hosting today. My name is TK.
I'm Spencer.
I'm David.
And I'm Jared.
Okay, cool. And I guess what we're going to do here, traditionally, we're just going to go around and just give our takes on what we've watched this week together or independently. And I guess to start things off, one thing that all three, just me, Spencer, and David watched was Everything Everywhere All at Once. And let's just go ahead and just start it off.
Yeah, so I really like this movie a lot. It's now in my top 10 list on Letterboxd of like movies that I've seen in general. And it was so much fun. It was very wacky, very entertaining, and like it also shared a really good message.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It was very wild. I didn't know what I was watching at all. I didn't see any trailers. I don't think any of us did. So we were just kind of thrown into the deep end and kind of just try to figure it out from there. And it was a great ride. It was fun. It was very interesting, like within the first half of the movie, because everything's so sporadic, so colorful, and I want to talk about like the fight scene specifically. It's so humorous. If you haven't seen Turn Down for What, the directors, the Daniels, the Daniels, they directed it. It's just like that, but a bit more wilder. And I really appreciated it. It really kept me laughing throughout the whole film and kept me intrigued and wanting more. But let's talk about anything that stuck out to any of us.
I don't know if there's like one thing that sticks out to me in particular. It's just all very enjoyable. I don't know. It's all crazy and unique and smart and dumb and it's everything.
Yeah, it's literally in the title.
Yeah. It's everything everywhere all at once. It's hard to talk about this movie. I don't know what to say about it.
I think what's really, I have a couple things, but one that I like my first go around for this movie is that it feels like a very refreshing take on this medium, just like it just feels so different than what a lot of other people are doing. And that is very much the style that they have like come to be known for and have really developed. And I feel like they really just came into their own with this movie. Of course, I haven't seen any of their other ones, but it's just cool to see that these guys, their style just really got me. It was kind of similar. I talked about this last podcast, but the one I could compare it to is like kind of how Mad Max felt for me at first. Of like I had to really get comfortable with the style of the movie, and also kind of Spider-Verse a little bit, with just it just felt off than what I'm used to. But then once I like started feeling comfortable with it, I was all for it. The style. I think it really fit the movie, and it's just impressive. Another one for me is just like the themes of this movie. I think that's what really got me to give this movie a 10, because, of course, for my first experience with this movie, I was with friends, and it felt really good to watch it that way, because we were all like reacting, and everything felt very like, what is going on? And just it was really fun to experience it in the theater, where we were all just like confused, laughing, tearing up, and like just along for the ride. But I think what resonated for me giving it a 10 again after watching it again was I didn't laugh as much the second time, because it wasn't as much of a like a shocker kind of comedy of how different this is. But I resonate even more with the themes of the movie, with Michelle, the main character, going through this this journey of learning how to be a mother and learning how to love her kids and love her family and love her husband. All of those just like that just got me right in the heart. That's what I really liked about the movie.
Yeah, I definitely like the message too. Like I stated before, it's very heartwarming and very sincere, and I feel like very family oriented. But it's also just kind of like being kind to everybody, just because you can, so we can all make our existence better, in general for everybody else. Because like one of the main conflicts in the movie was that like if we're just here and we're just existing, then like what's the point of anything, kind of? And so it's like you might as well have fun and make other people miserable for your own entertainment or enjoyment. Whereas like and then the conflicting argument is that, well, you should just be kind to everybody and just make sure everybody's having a good time too, I guess. I don't know.
Right. No, that makes sense, because if you think about it, with Michelle's character, I forgot the name, but she was just struggling. She didn't really like what her life was at in general. Having kind of somewhat of a mediocre, somewhat unsuccessful laundromat with her husband and her daughter. I guess she was just more focused on the material things in life, that she didn't really care too much about her personal relationships with her family members. I don't even think she had many friends at all, because she was just so focused on like trying to be successful. But I think with the message or one of the many messages that the movie was giving, was that in order to start somewhere, you have to start with yourself. And that one hit me hard, because it goes further into like, once you figure yourself out, try and strengthen the relationships of those you love. Hence, like her daughter, who was pretty much I guess I'll spoil it, like who was the antagonist.
Yeah.
And
well, the movie doesn't really hide that from you for very long. Like, as soon as it introduces the antagonist, it like basically cuts away to the daughter, and so like from like pretty much like
the halfway point.
No,
like
a
third.
It's like 20 minutes in.
Yeah, as soon as they introduce as soon as you see the bad guy like in the mask, it like cuts to a shot of like behind her head, and then she like moves her head, and then she like turns into the daughter
right,
at a bar. Right. And so like you kind of know. So not spoiling like a whole lot there, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think it's just beautiful, because I think all of us, whether we're not playing, but we can see ourselves in Michelle's shoes, or in the husband's shoes, or as her daughter, because we all have those relationships that we will struggle to keep or maintain. And I think that's the beauty of the film, because it takes you on this wild ride while explaining that lesson. Because when you think it couldn't get any weirder, it gets weirder. And I appreciated that, because I still kept up with it.
Yeah. The two that really resonated with me with this movie is the progression with her husband. I love that, like the idea that he does everything with kindness, but also like she doesn't realize that her husband's doing a lot more for her out of love than is actually going on. And for her, it's just like she's so focused on all her struggles that she doesn't realize that she has this loving husband that's trying to do everything for her. Instead, sees him as like this like lowly, like can't good for nothing kind of guy. And that's kind of what the like story makes you want to believe. But then as you realize like how many things he does for her to try to keep their business afloat, like regardless of how she treats him, and then to see that like kind of blossom into her realizing how much their relationship means to her. I love that. The first time I thought that was great, but then the second time, like picking up on that theme a little bit, and it was also cool to see like that, and also the progression with her and her daughter. And the whole idea of the mother having to learn how to accept the relationships in her life. I love that we get this through the platform of like multiple universes where they're all talking, and like in one universe, her and her husband are talking in an alley about like, if I would have been happy to be doing taxes and owning a laundromat with you in a different universe. Like I would have loved that. And then they're fighting in another universe. I love that. I have like one little fun fact I found out about the movie. So the husband, man, I might butcher his name, Ke Huy Quan. He was the actor, little kid actor in Goonies, and
Temple of Doom,
and Indiana Jones. Yeah. And he kind of stepped away from acting and then just went to film school and started doing like production stuff for years, decades. But then he watched, weirdly enough, Crazy Rich Asians and kind of got like some FOMO of like, man, I want to be part of projects. I want to be an Asian actor And so he called his agent and was like, hey, I want to be, in this world acting again. And so he got the call for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I thought he was phenomenal. I love like the many different iterations of himself he gets to be in the movie. And of course the stunt work, that was great.
Yeah, I thought he was really good too.
Yeah.
It's a fun return, like, because obviously he wasn't like doing this kind of stuff when he was a kid, but he really just sells you on like the character. And like I hope we see him in more stuff, because like he does a really good job of playing like the comedic scenes. He makes those really funny, but then he's also like able to show his emotional side in the moments that the film needs him to also.
Yeah.
I really like when actors can really shine when they're playing like multiple roles in like a single project or film, and it really kind of shows how much they can range, especially when they have to like make like a snap like switch real quick too, just to show like how fast they can go from acting one way to another. I think it's great. It's always fun to see that.
We saw that recently in one of our past podcasts with Birdman. It's not as like dramatic, but just seeing actors having to act in different ways in a movie instead of just one role.
Yeah.
That is a little bit more. What's the word I'm looking for?
Like impressive?
Yeah.
I would say it's impressive, yeah.
Yeah, this one in Everything Everywhere All at Once is a little bit more dramatic of like, oh, I'm switching bodies and I'm this zany guy now. But yeah, Birdman's a little bit different with them acting out as a different role within their production.
Yeah.
Going back to what you were talking about, Jared, with like the style, I think that's the thing that I like about this movie the most, personally, is the way that the Daniels, like, I think it's a little too much maybe to say like push the limits of filmmaking, but they definitely have a very distinct style. And I love the way that they choose to portray like events or like concepts in the film. There are a lot of really creative like transitions and special effect shots. I think I'm the only one of the four of us that watched Swiss Army Man.
I watched it.
Oh, you watched Swiss Army Man? Okay. It's been a long time, so I don't actually remember a whole lot about that movie. I remember liking it, but the most fun part about that movie was like watching Daniel Radcliffe as a dead body perform different like functions, like being a Gatling gun, a trebuchet. I don't even know, just all these crazy different things, and like similar to the style of the Turn Down for What music video, where everything's kind of like, I don't know, like hyper realistic and like fast, high frame rate action. It's something that's carried over through all of their work, but I think that they perfected their own formula in Everything Everywhere All at Once. I really like certain, like I mentioned, transitions. So like when you do see the back of the villain's head and she like has something in her hand, and it's a shot that's in the trailer, so it's kind of unfortunate that like it spoils some cool visual moments, but like she like turns her head and the object, and then she turns back, and each like semi-rotation it cuts to like a version of her in a different universe until she finally comes back, and then we see her in the universe that we're first introduced to the daughter character. So just like really creative things like that, or like when Evelyn, which is Michelle Yeoh's character's name, when she first puts on the earpieces and switches to a different version of herself, the way that like the screen splits in half as if it were glass, and you can see like the different sides of her. So the visual presentation of the film is really impressive, and I think that's what makes it the most fun for me. The action scenes are well choreographed, and just fun. And then, like you guys are mentioning, the Daniels have a very interesting sense of humor that's very random. Personally, I feel like it gets a little bit too into the random territory, but it's definitely like balls to the wall crazy, and it's laudable that they're willing to like just go for these crazy concepts, There's the Ratatouille gag where there's like the raccoon that's controlling the chef.
Rakakuni.
Yeah.
Oh, I
there's
thought that was hilarious.
the part that like actually got me laughing out loud in the theater was the hot dog fingers.
Yeah.
That part caught me off guard so hard, and like when it cuts to the Evelyn with the hot dog fingers and she's watching like the musical and they're like singing with their hot dog fingers. I lost it because I just was not expecting that at all. So, you know, they pull every trick in the book, everything that you have ever imagined or that you would never imagine in your life. They put it on screen, and for that, I think that's like, you know, praiseworthy.
Yeah. I had my friend after the movie, he was like, I could watch like 30 more hours of that. Just like, it's just refreshing. It's just so fun and random and like not expecting half of the jokes. And like, I agree. I think the most like random one that really got me was of course the hot dog fingers and like, and the progression of the Rakakuni joke. Cause it started out as like a funny broken English joke that she didn't understand like what movie she's trying to reference. And then it like broke into the like actual raccoon controlling the chef. I love that. But yeah, for me, what like solidifies it so hard as a 10 is like the infusion of their style and how well it delivers for me on their themes. You know, I really enjoy the like. Of course, it's very satisfying, very interesting to watch the whole time in terms of the visual aspects of this movie, but also like it works really well for me when I'm watching the progression of this mom trying to love her daughter and this mom trying to love her husband. And yeah, that's just what really got me, especially the second time. I like the first time I like got a little emotional, like I thought it was really sweet. And then the second time already knowing everything was happening, but it was like somehow got me worse. Maybe it was because it was like midnight. I don't know. But I was like sitting in the theaters, like tearing up. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like the husband one, I'm like tearing up a little bit. And then when we get to the daughter progression of like trying to love her daughter and trying to stop her from ending everything, I was like, oh, like it was about to just flood.
No, I'm glad you were feeling that way because I too was feeling that. I was explaining that to David and Spencer after the theaters. I don't have to remember it very well, but I was like, this is such a relatable film. Not that I've gone through that, but some parts of it I have. So it's cool to see that how the daughter is kind of portrayed as like the evil person because she doesn't have that relationship that she wished she had with the mom, with Evelyn. And I was like, dang.
Yeah.
And how Evelyn's like trying her best through every single universe that like the daughter's trying to escape, you know, because she's so used to being distanced. But the mom's like, no, come here, even as rocks. That's what got me. And I was laughing, but also like I was kind of emotional as well. I'm like, dang, that it's different. Like, it doesn't matter what universe you're in, your mom's gonna try and like love you as much as she can when she understands the relationship. So
yeah. That's that I agree. On a personal level, that theme really like resonated with me, and almost to the point where I was like, "Man, I want to like recommend this to my mom." But then I thought about like the hallway scene where they're fighting the cops, and I was like, "Maybe I can't. I don't know." And of course, like the what is it? The auditor's trophy scene. I was like,
my gosh!
I don't know if I can, but I wish. You know.
yeah,
it's definitely got a weird blend of like Rick and Morty humor and then like super emotional, like dramatic scenes, you know. So I guess before we do move on, I feel like I'm kind of the outlier here. I enjoyed the movie quite a bit, but I definitely didn't as much as everyone else. So I kind of want to just like explain my perspective on it and like why I think it didn't click with me the same way that it clicked with you guys. So one of the first things that I noticed was the first act is pretty like exposition heavy. There are quite a few scenes where the husband character is like explaining like lore, or not lore, but like world mechanics and like time travel mechanics to Evelyn. And like he does this several times in different scenes. And ultimately, those mechanics don't really matter a whole lot, because once you get to like the second half of the movie, it's more about the emotional beats than it is about any of the time travel mechanics or the universe mechanics. So it feels like maybe we didn't need all that exposition. And then I think personally, I just didn't actually connect with like the story or the themes that much. I understand what the movie's going for, but it kind of lost me with its like philosophical ponderings on like nihilism, and like, because the daughter is like a negative nihilist where she's like, nothing matters, so I'm just gonna like, destroy the multiverse. And she actually convinces Evelyn that that's a correct way of thinking. And then I guess, and maybe some of these things would be cleared up on rewatch, but I guess I didn't really buy or understand what caused Evelyn to change her mind on that issue. And she kept the nihilism that her daughter was able to instill in her, but she kind of made it into a positive nihilism, like what Spencer was talking about earlier, where, nothing matters, so you might as well be good to people and be nice. And I guess I just don't like resonate with that nihilistic perspective. I can be kind of pessimistic sometimes, or more realistic than optimistic, but I definitely wouldn't consider myself a nihilist, and I don't. I'm not emotionally connected to those ideas that the movie was conveying. And then, kind of related to that, I didn't personally feel like some of the emotional moments were earned. So like, I guess I'm not totally clear on, and I guess maybe, again, this is more of an emotional level than an intellectual level, because obviously I understood like the sequence of the events, but I didn't personally feel like Evelyn's change of heart toward her daughter and her acceptance of this positive nihilism, I'm not really sure where that comes from and how she was able to make that like 180 in her worldview so quickly. And so for me, I think I could kind of sum the whole thing up in to like a phrase as like, I felt like the emotional pacing of the story was off. And so a lot of things happened really quickly in like the last third or so of the movie. And so because of that, I was able to still enjoy like the visuals and the style and the action, but I was less invested in the characters and the story than I wish that I was.
So I feel like I totally see where you're coming from, but I think I might be able to help you a little bit with like where like that switch comes from, the 180. When she's kind of on Joy's side, where she's like with the negative nihilism, she has this like moment in like all those other universes, because she's like expanded her consciousness that way with her husband, and in all of these universes, her husband is like there for her and comforting her and saying like everything's going to be okay, and maybe it's okay that everything's going to be okay, and it would have been fine if they were just running a laundromat together and stuff. And she's realizing that like all these small moments, all these nice moments is what makes life worth living and stuff like that. And I feel like that's when she makes that 180, when she has all these experiences with Waymond. Waymond.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. That's a nice sentiment.
No, yeah. I think you have a very valid point. If you view that movie and I could see where you're coming from, of like everything. I almost said everything ever all at once, just because like this zany, fast-paced method can like be a huge strength, but also come with like cracks in its delivery, and that can come with like them attempting something emotional. Maybe the story beats didn't happen at a pace that made sense for the movie, and like if you can't resonate with the theme and how quickly, or if it felt quick to you because of the story, then yeah, it doesn't make sense how she can make such a 180, Michelle's character. But that's just if it works for you, and I can totally see where that might not have worked for some people.
Yeah, because this definitely isn't a case of like my going in like wanting to be a contrarian because
Yeah.
I had really high hopes, and I tried not to be like, too. I tried not to let my expectations cloud the reality of what the movie was. I was just gonna try to appreciate it for what it was, and like I'm happy that you guys were able to get like this kind of emotional resonance out of it. And I guess it's just something that I wasn't able to, but
Yeah. Yeah, so okay, and I highly recommend you guys give it another rewatch if you'd like to do something one night. I didn't have as much fun because like it, I was expecting all of the more zany randomness. I knew what to expect, and some of the jokes in his hard quite like like the hot dog fingers wasn't as funny the second time, but the emotional moments kind of hit me harder. So
For sure. All right. Well, we're gonna just wrap this topic of everything ever all at once, just to move on to our next category. But before we do, if you want to give like your ratings of it on a scale of 1 to 5, I can start. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. I would highly recommend this. It's a really fun film. However, it's a bit more mature in some scenes, so just keep that in mind.
for me, probably a solid 5 out of 5. It was somewhere in between a 9 and 10. Or closer to a 9 my first watch, but upon talking I decided to give it a 10, but then second time it kind of solidified for me, just less of a I had to get rid of that first theater experience in my head of like, oh, this is amazing, and trying to wipe recency, because I feel like this movie's getting a lot of that, especially if you look at the Letterboxd app. But for me, a second time through helped solidify the emotional story beats and the wackiness of their style.
Let's see. I gave it a 9. 4.5 out of 5. 9 out of 10. Really good. Really liked it.
Yeah. For me, I've been like torn on it ever since I watched it. And I think part of it's that I want to like it as much as everyone else. And so like I feel bad for like not giving it as high of a rating. But then I think I realized like the rating doesn't mean it. Like the rating is just a reflection of my own like subjective thoughts. So there's nothing wrong with like whatever I give it. But I've been straddling like a 7 or an 8. I think I have it right now as a 7. It could go up on rewatch. I can see what Jared's saying about maybe the emotional moments making more sense or hitting harder the second time. So I'm willing to change my rating, but I think for now it's a 7. Like Jared was saying, there definitely is a lot of recency bias. It's currently the number 1 highest rated narrative film on Letterboxd. And I read an interview of the Daniels, and they were talking about that, and they were both saying that, yeah, it's really embarrassing because it feels like a video we just like sent each other over there, that we texted each other and that we thought was funny, and now everyone's like saying it's the best movie of all time, and and they like the movie that they made, but they also don't think that it's like better than The Godfather or anything. So it's interesting.
You're kind of doing like what's another phrase for that? Like the Lord's work. Just because I feel solid in giving a 5 out of 5, but then I see where it's ranked in Letterboxd, and I'm like, dang, like maybe not everyone give it a 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
I loved it, but stop everyone else, like because and whatever.
I see.
But I don't think it is better than those.
For sure. Yeah, it's fair that people can have their own opinions, but I think this next film we're going to talk about, we all have similar opinions on it. So something that all of us had watched this previous week is Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. Oh my gosh,
Yeah, it's interesting to watch Everything Everywhere All at Once, this movie about multiverse, and then go to Marvel's version of a multiverse movie, like a week later, and it just having those two come out around the same time really like put it into perspective, like how good or bad this Doctor Strange movie was. Mm-hmm. And for me, I personally didn't like it. What about you guys?
Yeah, this was also something that I think. Well, this one we all watched separately. TK and Spencer watched it first. They kind of came back with some like mixed opinions, so I just kind of told them to spoil it for me, and then And then I watched it with my fiance like a couple days later, and basically agreed with most of their assessments. So I'll let them go first.
All right, so yeah, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. I'm like a big superhero fan, and I love superhero movies, but this did not do it for me. I was really, really looking forward to this movie too because it's being directed by Sam Raimi, and I love his Spider-Man movies. I still need to see his Evil Dead and stuff like that, but I know he's a great director, and I feel like he was just not allowed to do what he wanted exactly. I feel like Marvel had already planned a narrative for where they wanted this movie to go and some points that they needed to hit, and it just restricted Raimi a little bit too much, and he wasn't allowed to shine. He definitely shines in some moments of this movie as well. Uh, Basically, if you haven't seen it, go see it now because I'm just going to spoil it, give a little bit of a synopsis about it. Basically, Doctor Strange finds this girl who's being hunted by Wanda, so Wanda can go to a multiverse where her kids exist, and she is willing to kill anybody and everybody to get what she wants.
Yeah. Well, okay. First off, and this movie is kind of highlighted for me how the Marvel Cinematic Universe is kind of like, at this point, it's kind of like a house of cards where everything is built off of itself so hard that in order for this movie to make sense, you not only have to have seen the previous Doctor Strange movie, but you also needed to have seen Infinity War, Endgame, and then the Disney Plus TV show WandaVision. And if you haven't seen those, then a lot of the things that this movie dabble... Oh, and I guess No Way Home, because they reference that, and that kind of plays a role too. So if you haven't been watching like every single Marvel property from the past, like, I don't know what,
Decade?
Decade, or I guess probably closer to like 5 years is when Infinity War came out. But but I guess Doctor Strange came out in 2016. Anyway, if you haven't been keeping up on all your Marvel properties, this movie isn't really going to work for you as a standalone feature. And so, anyway, that's just like one thing that I noticed, that I did not realize that WandaVision was going to be required viewing for this. Fortunately, I watched it and I enjoyed it a lot. But also, unfortunately, this movie kind of takes a big dump on that show too.
Yeah, basically. I personally liked WandaVision a lot, and it's a really good story about how Wanda is like grieving with all the loss she's experienced and how she comes to terms with it in the end. And then this movie just completely throws it away, completely undoes all of the growth that she's made in WandaVision. And all of a sudden, she doesn't care about those she hurts. She just wants to get exactly what she wants, which is the opposite of what happened in WandaVision.
Yeah, what's so weird to me is that like WandaVision, like Spencer's saying, like it's this big emotional arc of her like realizing that she can't have everything she wants and do bad things to get it. And then this movie undoes all of that, and it doesn't even undo it over the course of the film. So when TK and Spencer came back from the movies and they were telling me about stuff, they said that Wanda was the antagonist, and I thought, okay, that's an interesting choice. And so in my head I thought, okay, she's going to start off working for the good guys, and then about, I don't know, a third or halfway through the movie, she's going to be like, tempted and lured to the dark side. She's going to, in the process of her helping them, she's going to be exposed to some universe where her kids are alive, and it's going to tempt her beyond that which she can stand, and then she's going to fall to evil, and that's when she's going to want to try to get with her kids no matter the cost. But instead, what the movie does is it says, here's Wanda, and actually, in between WandaVision and this movie, she has become evil, become the Scarlet Witch, evil monster lady, and she has already sent out interdimensional demon monsters to search for this little girl. I guess not little. To search for this girl so that she can jump universes to where her kids are alive. And so, it doesn't even give you the emotional arc on screen. It doesn't even show you her fall to the dark side. It just says, oh, she's evil now, and that's the whole movie.
And some people would say, like, if they were listening to this, like, but no, David, guys, like, Wanda, if you watch the end credits for WandaVision, you can see she like starts turning bad and is using the book to be bad as Scarlet Witch.
That is not a character arc.
But it's a reach. It's just a little bit of a reach, in my opinion, like to be like, go from that end credit scene where they decide like, okay, she's going to be the Scarlet Witch now. It's like, okay, to, where we start Multiverse of Madness. And it's just, I don't know, a little bit much for me.
Do we want to talk about the things that we did like about the movie? Because it did have some moments.
Yeah, a positive thing for me was, like, I will, what was I trying to say? I will give the benefit of a doubt on this one, of, like, the parts, because there are parts of this movie that I like, which are a lot of Sam Raimi's influence as a director in the movie, a lot of the, like, camera movements and the horror elements, and, like, his kind of, I don't know, like, dramatic way of doing camera work sometimes, especially after just watching Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 with David. It just, it helped me appreciate what he brings to the table as a director. And so when those moments were happening through the movie, I like that. But, those are only like small little cement fillers to the huge cracks of this movie, of like where in my head, I'm thinking the Marvel studio is like, we need to do this, we need to do this, it needs to lead to this, Doctor Strange needs a third eye, we need to do this. And it's just like, okay, I guess we don't need directors these days, only for the cool camera movements every once in a while.
Yeah. Anytime it felt like a Sam Raimi movie, I was really enjoying it. I loved all the crazy camera work, and like there were some really horrific parts to this movie that felt like were kind of like pushing the PG-13 rating, which is something that Sam Raimi's done before with like Drag Me to Hell, which I'm pretty sure is rated PG-13, even though it's got a scene of like someone like vomiting like guts. Anyway, like, so anytime it felt like that, it was like, okay, this is cool, and like this is distinct. Like I can tell that this is like a Sam Raimi moment or idea. But anytime it felt like a Kevin Feige movie is when it just kind of went back into the slog. And like Doctor Strange isn't really a character. He doesn't like go through any arc. I guess they kind of try to make him go through an arc of like learning to trust people, but I don't know, it's very like sloppy, and it especially doesn't work because like his relationship with Rachel McAdams' character has never worked. It didn't really work in the first movie. She's just kind of there because you have to have a love interest. And then here, she's there at the beginning, kind of, and then like an alternate universe version of her shows up later. But, they don't have any history that we know of because they're two different versions of each other. So we have even less of a connection with this, dark redheaded version of her. And none of the other characters are that interesting besides Wanda. Wanda is great. Like, as much as I hate the fact that they turned her evil, Elizabeth Olsen gives a great performance as evil Wanda, and it kind of like is able to get you past the fact that it was like a dumb decision to do off screen. But then we also have America Chavez, who's got to be just like, gosh, the Jar Jar Binks of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because like somehow she's like super important to the universe, but she's also kind of like annoying, and like her. I don't know if I should blame the actress, or I can at least say the performance was lacking. I've not seen her in anything else. I'm pretty sure this is like one of her first projects. So, who knows if she's a good actress, but she definitely did not give a good performance in this movie. She felt more like a plot device than an actual character. She's just kind of exists to be the thing that everyone's after.
I think she's only... I think this is her big project. I was looking at Letterboxd, what other films or movies that she's in. They're all like rated like 3 or 2 stars, 1 stars, and I'm like, dang. And on her bio, it says that she's pretty much known for the role of like a Netflix series named The Babysitter's Club. I'm like, okay, cool. awesome. I hope she acts good in that too.
Yeah.
Or at least better. But there's some scenes where she was acting and I was like, I was taken aback from the film. Like, it took me out of the film.
Yeah.
And I was, every time it cut to her, I was just kind of, I just couldn't take the film seriously
Do you
anymore.
want to say the one that you and Spencer were telling me?
Yeah, so there's a scene where Doctor Strange and America Chavez, they go into another universe and they find, was it Morley? Is that his name?
Mordo?
Mordo?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The guy that they hinted would turn evil at the end of the last one, and never went anywhere.
Did
but-
anything with?
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So he brings them inside. I don't know what this building that.
Sanctum.
Yeah, the sanctum, and he gives them, I guess, tea to drink. To show hospitality. But in reality, he's just trying to make them kind of become hostages later.
Yeah. So he drugs the tea, and first Doctor Strange can tell that something's up, and the camera's doing this fun, over the top Sam Raimi like woo woo woo.
To show that someone's kind of getting dizzy or they're being drugged. Just so you can get that effect with them. And it pans over to America Chavez, right? And she's like, "Did you just drug us, or is
What's in this tea?
what's in this tea?" And then she just blacks out. Yeah,
It's hard to like, we can't do this over the podcast with the recording, but like TK and Spencer did like an
reenactment.
a reenactment, like an impression of like the face that she made when she fell over, and that's pretty much exactly how it played out. It's just very like comical, but not in like an intentional campy Sam Raimi way, and more in like a, man, this is a weird performance kind of way.
Yeah, it like, because when you're drugged, you like slowly fall. She just legit flopped on the side of the chair.
What's in this tea?
Blah. And I was like, that. It was that moment where I was taken aback. I was like, I can't take her seriously anymore. It was to the point. That scene alone. Whoever watched the film over the past week, I always bring up American. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, she's okay. I was like, what are your thoughts when she got drugged? And they would always bring up that scene. And I'm like, exactly.
Yeah.
They could have done that shot another time, in my opinion. I don't know why I went with that one.
This movie felt like a visual metaphor of Kevin Feige has a empty box checklist that he needs, and he gives Sam Raimi a nice calligraphy pin. He's like, here, you can check off these boxes in a very nice squiggly check if you'd like. And it's like, we're just getting things done for the next movie, and it's just sad. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, because again, the MCU is a house of cards, and so you got to be really careful about each individual movie because it's got to build on the last stuff, and it's got to be structurally sound enough that you can keep building more things on. And so it really limits the creativity of each film because it's got to exist within a certain spot. They already have the next, 10 projects with Doctor Strange and America Chavez planned, so you can't really take a whole lot of liberties, and really all you can take liberties with are the execution, like what you're saying. And that's not necessarily an inherently bad way to build a cinematic universe, but it's definitely not a way to create satisfying and lasting art that people are going to like resonate with for a long time if you're only doing these, box checking activities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of like just getting things done, can we talk about the Illuminati and like how they were presented and then immediately killed off?
I have a love-hate situation with the whole thing. I like seeing my favorite comic book characters on the big screen, and I really liked seeing John Krasinski finally casted as Mr. Fantastic, but the way he was portrayed, I'm not blaming John Krasinski at all because he had to do what he was given. Just the way he was portrayed was very poorly written, and he was like made out to be the dumbest man in the world instead of the smartest. Black Bull's also pretty dumb. Captain Marvel's weak AF. Who else?
Yeah, she dies by some rocks.
Yeah, rocks. Captain Carter.
Yeah.
I think Captain Carter was like the only one that was pretty.
She was the one that lasts the longest, but she's got no powers.
Jetpack.
She got a jetpack. Yeah,
She got a jetpack.
That's like Joyride.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same like camp as like Spencer
Mhm.
because part of me thinks like man, it's pretty cool to like introduce these new superheroes and then just have Sam Raimi just like obliterate them in the most gory ways possible.
I enjoyed that.
So part of that's kind of fun, but the fact that that also is all the characters serve like to do makes their inclusion feel even more superfluous, because it's like, okay, why did we have this whole big reveal when all of these characters show up? Like, you know, because of course Mr. Fantastic can't just be in the room. He's got to like teleport in, because it's got to be like
A reveal.
an end game reveal, like when they go through the portals, because everything has to be that now. So like, you know, he's got to pop in, and then we have that when Professor X comes in. So, you know, they build up these characters because they know that they're fan favorites, or at least the two of them are. I don't know how many people were too excited to see Captain Marvel and Captain Carter, and isn't Black Bolt from the Inhumans TV show?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same actor or not. I'd have to look into that, but
So, but like, you know, they bring those characters in for the fans just so that they can get killed off.
I will
And
say
so it's kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of torn on it too.
Yeah.
I feel like it wasn't horrible. It didn't make me cringe, but I also didn't really care too much about it either.
Right.
So.
I will say I did like Professor X. Like, he was like the only good part of the Illuminati.
He had a cool scene where he's going into Wanda's like mind.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Like,
really
the visual
cool.
presentation
cool.
of like everything's white. He's trying to pick her up from the rebel, and then the red clouds come in.
Mhm.
It was really visually engaging.
Yeah, it was.
And then everything with Wanda was like terrifying.
Yeah, and just the way he was like talking to and interacting with Steven, even like Sir Patrick Stewart has been playing this character for 2 decades now, and so he knows how to play him pretty well. And so it felt like the same character that we've seen in all the X movies, and it was good to see him probably for one last time.
Yeah.
That's what he said about Logan. So maybe this is going to be the last time. We'll see.
I see. Yeah. And apparently, according to interviews that Elizabeth Olsen had, that she was supposed to kill off way more people. But I think she was against it, or they had just cut it back. But I was surprised. And I had a friend who said, because they just watched it last night, she's like, I wish more people got killed. And I was like, what the heck? All right. But yeah. Yeah, so we're just going to wrap up this section of Doctor Strange, and we'll just give it a quick rating. Again, scale 1 to 5. I think out of what I saw on Letterboxd, I think I gave it the highest. I gave it a 3.5. I thought there was some cool VFX and good visuals throughout the whole film, and I really appreciate that. That's one thing that gets me. But America's what drove it back so much. Yeah, I can't. So that's why I gave it a 3.5.
Yeah, I would give this a 2.5 out of 5. Very, very mixed feelings. I like a lot of Sam Raimi's touch on this, but it just was a checkbox, a list of checkboxes that needed to be done. It just was very disappointing.
I think I gave it a 3 on Letterboxd, but I'm gonna back it down to a 2.5 because I really wanted to enjoy this film, and I'm just really disappointed that I didn't. So 2.5.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Spencer and Jared. For me, this is like a 5 out of 10, 2.5 out of 5. It's hard because like I did really enjoy the parts that did feel like Sam Raimi. Like, you know, we didn't even mention the part when Doctor Strange possesses the corpse of one of his alternate selves and bursts out of the ground like an Evil Dead, and then he gets a cape of dead souls. Like, there's some really cool Sam Raimi stuff in this, but it's just bogged down by like the story and like, yeah, all the check boxes that it's gotta complete. So yeah, very middling on this. I didn't hate it. This isn't Black Widow, but
It's not Thor Dark World.
Yeah, it's not Thor Dark World, but yeah, it's not one of the better ones. If I think it's definitely skippable if you feel like it. So
Yeah, and I know for a fact as a podcast we spoiled things. But the fact that they killed off Wanda too is another thing that caused.
Oh,
it to
yeah.
yeah,
Sorry,
That was
not
very
sorry.
unsatisfying.
But, yeah.
But they left it open-ended enough, so
No,
if
they
wanna
didn't.
keep using her.
you don't see her die. You just see her get crushed by rocks.
Yeah, that's up for
They
theories.
killed Captain Marvel, so
Yeah, but yeah, you know them. That was just open enough for them to, if they want to, they can.
Right. Well, there are other versions of Wanda in other universes, but the problem with that is those other Wandas haven't gone through what the Wanda that we know has gone through. So even if Wanda shows back up, it won't be the same one. So that's kind of, hollow. But anyway.
All right, cool. All right, we're going to wrap that up, and we're going to kick it off into the film we all watched, and where this main episode is for. So I'll just kick it over to Jared to introduce the film that he recommended.
Yeah, so last podcast, I was the one recommending the movie, and I went with a nostalgic one for me that I watched growing up a couple times and thought it felt like a fever dream until I realized it was a movie. So I thought it was a great recommendation for this podcast to kind of shake things up. So we watched Tommy from 1975, directed by Ken Russell. Give a quick synopsis. A psychosomatically deaf, dumb, and blind boy becomes a master pinball player and the object of a religious cult. That's the movie. To give you guys listening, and for you guys a little bit of a background on this movie, this was originally, if you guys have heard of the music group The Who, this was originally an album that they did, surprisingly enough, a satirical rock operatic album called Tommy as well. And the album, if you go to it and go to listen to it, it is the story of this movie. And so it came out actually 6 years before this movie did. And Ken Russell was given the green light to take this album and put I would describe it as take a story music album, a very weird concept for an album, first off, and give it a visual medium that is coherent enough to be a story for you to watch, which is just really, really, really weird. So, what'd you guys think?
There was a lot of things I thought. Hey.
So real quick, the cast kind of threw me off at first. So the main character of the movie is one of the members of the group The Who, but also Jack Nicholson is in here, and Tina Turner plays the Acid Queen as well, which is just, and Eric Clapton, and then we see Elton John for a scene to give us the probably the most popular song of this album. But this is a very weird movie, and this is what I was expecting.
Yeah, I mentioned this in the last episode, but I think I was the only one that had at least heard of the movie, and it was because of you, Jared. But the only part that I had seen was, I guess I watched the trailer when you told me about it, and then I watched a clip that after watching it, I realized is from the end of the movie, and he's the main character, or Tommy, is coming off of these giant metal balls, and there's all these pinball machines everywhere. I remember just thinking there's some of them are on fire, and there's dead bodies. And I remember when I watched the clip, I was like, "What the heck is this? This is crazy." And after watching the movie, I can say, "What the heck is this? That was crazy." Because it's just very weird. And again, like Jared was saying, the first of all, Tommy as an album is because it's a concept album, because the album by The Who is the songs that you hear in the movie. All of the songs in the movie are just from the album. I listened to some of the songs after watching the movie because I wanted to hear how similar or different they were. And apart from production and vocals, which I think we'll get into probably a little bit later, they're the same songs. And so basically you're just listening to the album back to back with visuals. But the idea of this concept album is weird anyway. Psychosomatically deaf, dumb, and blind kid is a master pinball player and a cult leader. And the movie plays out exactly how I guess how you think that kind of movie would go. It's very rough, and things just kind of happen, and you just kind of jump from one song to another as it tells the story. None of the all of the dialogue is in the in the music, so there's no dialogue that isn't from the album itself. There's some really weird visuals, like there's some really psychedelic stuff that happens. It's a trip. It's not as crazy as I think it could have gone. In fact, I think it might have benefited from going even a little bit crazier than it did. I think that might have justified the lack of story more if like the visuals had been even wilder. But yeah, definitely one of the strangest things that I think that I've watched.
Yeah, I'll agree to that. I've watched a lot of weird things. That sounds kind of interesting to say, but those weird things are kind of like, so for example, Nacho Libre. It's like a film that you would watch like one time, you know, but you can occasionally come back to it. Tommy is definitely a film you would watch one time, but for me personally, I don't know if it's one that I'd go back and watch because it's a bit out there for me. Like, it's definitely an outlier. I might watch it maybe another time in my lifetime that I live, but yeah, it has its moments, but it's so weird.
Yeah. What? Okay. So you kind of have to approach this movie not like other movies, because this is a very interesting blip in film history, because there was a small amount of time where rock groups were coming out with albums that were very conceptual, very experimental, such as Tommy. Another good example is Pink Floyd, The Wall. They also had a very conceptualized album that was very well received, and later on became a film as well, kind of similar to this, where the concept of the album was put into the medium of a movie to explore a little bit more what the album was trying to achieve. So it is very, very weird, but they accomplished what the album was, you know, and in a very, you know, like, it wasn't done bad. It's just very weird, you know. I would not come back to this movie other than to, like, I don't know. I don't know how I would, but like, for example, for me, my friend last night, he was over and I saw David's text of like, oh, hey guys, make sure you watch the movie. And I'm like, oh gosh. And so my friend, I was like, hey man, I know you came over to hang out, but like, I have to watch this movie. And I kind of gave him like a little gist of like, hey, this is going to be really weird. I saw this when I was a kid. Here's what to expect a little bit. And we started watching, and like, his jaw was open like the whole time. It doesn't help that it was also like 12 to 2 a.m. when we watched this. So we're just sitting there like brain frying as we're watching this.
I mean, that's probably like the best way to watch this, though.
I would agree.
It was the best way to watch it.
Unfortunately, we did watch this movie sober, so.
Yeah.
So I actually woke up this morning and it was like 8 o'clock and I was like, I can watch it in bed. So I didn't get ready at all. I'm just kind of groggy, but I was wide awake and I was awake to watch it, be sober about it. But my roommate was still sleeping. So like, I'm just watching this film on my phone and my AirPods are in, noise canceled, and I swear, I don't know how he didn't wake up, but I was laughing so hard in some scenes multiple times throughout the film. But I was also like confused. I was like, why is this happening? Or why did she do that? Why are these camera angles like this? It was so interesting. I loved it, but I also hated it.
Yeah. Honestly, it's really hard to know where to start with this movie because, like Jared said, this isn't like a normal movie. So I think we kind of just have to like take it for what it is and like try our best to comment on what it attempts to do and then how successful it does those things.
Okay.
So I guess like foundationally, something that we can talk about is the music itself. So I'm not sure about you guys, but I'm actually not too familiar with The Who. I'm familiar like with their most famous song, Baba O'Reilly, but like that's about it. I went through some of their other songs, other popular songs of theirs to see if any of them like sounded familiar to me, and none of them did. So I'm not very familiar with The Who, so I'm not like a big fan of The Who. But I didn't love a lot of the music in the film, and I guess by extension the album, because like I said, the film just is a recreation of the album. There were a few standouts to me that I did enjoy, particularly like the most popular song in the album, Pinball Wizard. So when Elton John shows up and he starts singing Pinball Wizard, that's a really fun song, and there's a reason why that one's the one that's included in the trailer. And Elton John's great. I think he's actually on the original song in the album too. Could be mistaken on that. But so that one's really good. And then I think the other song that I did also really like, it also has to do with how the movie presents the song. But it's when Tommy is like hang gliding around the world, like saving people from gang wars and gambling addiction, and like it's a song sensation. And again, I'm not sure how much of that was I liked the song, or if it was I liked the fact that Tommy's hang gliding around saving the world. But those were like the two standout like musical numbers in this in the film. I guess I also did like the Acid Queen. That one was really weird. Like the scene that song takes place in the film is really weird. Like it's like a strip club or like a brothel or something. I can't tell.
Like a peak club or something. You know.
Like a peep show or something. But then like when you actually go inside, like Tina Turner's there, and so she takes Tommy, and you think that she's gonna like have sex with him or something to like make him into a real man. And maybe that's what's going on in the meta narrative.
Right.
But what we actually see is she turns into like an Iron Maiden made of like armor with syringes inside, and then he steps in. The syringes fill with this red chemical, and then they go inside of him, and they turn him into like Jesus, and then a skeleton with a snake in it, and then he turns back into himself. So that I guess that part stand out for being so wacky in an already wacky movie. But anyway, I guess all this was to talk about the music. What do you guys think of the album itself?
It just like the only comparison I have is like I'm not really that familiar with the Who, other than of course some of their popular songs. But like in comparison to the Pink Floyd's similar take on a conceptual album that kind of has a theme / story to it with The Wall, I don't like this album. You know, it is really weird to me that this band came up. Like, I get that at the time they were being experimental, but a lot of the songs just didn't do it for me. Even after listening to the actual versions of them with their vocals, it didn't work on its own. So it was just interesting to me that they like turned into a movie, you know, where I think it worked better than listening to the album on my own. I wouldn't be like, hey guys, you want to listen to Break the Mirror by the Who? It's like, no, I don't.
Yeah, you do raise a good point real quick when you say like their own vocals, because one of the most distracting things about the music in this movie is that it's all done by like the actors. Obviously they're all like dubbing over themselves because there's no like ambient noise in the film. All you're hearing is like the music in the background and then like the dubbed over vocals. But like especially Oliver Reed, who I recognized from Gladiator. He plays like Tommy's surrogate father or like stepfather or however you want to call it.
Uncle.
Yeah, Uncle Frank, is that what he's called?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Oliver Reed, great actor. I like him in Gladiator, but he's not like a vocalist. And so anytime he's like warbling on screen, it's kind of distracting. And a lot of the other actors are like that too. Like Jack Nicholson is not a singer. Tina Turner does a great job with her vocals. Elton John, but anyone else that they get to like sing that isn't a singer is just very distracting. Like why is Jack Nicholson in this movie?
Yeah.
I think the only song that I liked was I'm Free. That was the only one. And I don't know exactly why I liked that one, but I just know that I was like, okay, this one this one isn't as bad as the rest. Maybe that's like not a good way to compare songs or base my enjoyment off of them, but I did not dislike that song.
Yeah. Well, because some of the songs were just really weird.
They were really weird.
Yeah.
I guess I wish that I had done a little bit more research before the movie instead of doing it after. But like I didn't realize that like all of the songs are just from the album. So like there's the song where it's like it's a boy, and I was like, and while I was watching the movie, I was like, this is a really weird song for the movie to be having, where like the only lines are like, it's a boy, and it's the day of peace, and it's a boy. But then, like, I find out, like, oh, that's literally the song, and that's all the song is about, too. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
The one scene that really, well, there were multiple scenes that kind of creeped me out, was near the beginning with the Marilyn Monroe religious cult.
Yeah.
That was funny.
I'm like, what is the point of this? All the shots they're taking of this weirdly made statue, it kind of grossed me out a bit. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable watching this in bed with my roommate just across the room. If he like sees me seeing this, be like, what are you watching? I'm like, I swear it's nothing bad. Although it looks bad, it's not. It was interesting how they had that concept. Like, was that the whole point of the song that was being like? I have so many questions regarding this.
Yeah, it's hard to know how much of it's like the creative liberty from the people working on the film, and then how much of it is like gleaned from the like intention of the album.
Exactly,
because the album is definitely like obviously dabbles in themes of like cults and stuff, like the futility of cults and how they like exploit people and their pain.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the whole like the Marilyn Monroe cult and like the statue and the weird priestesses that have like the masks on, and
oh my gosh,
that stuff's really weird.
Yeah, it freaked me out a bit, and then it all became better when like the mom tries to make him kiss Marilyn Monroe's like feet of the statue, and he just doesn't do it, and in turn like it causes the whole statue just fall and break. I'm like, oh, I think they got excommunicated, but all right.
I think it's just interesting because like this is just such a weird album, and Ken Russell was kind of tasked with like trying to put it in a cohesive story that still displays the concept of the album. So I think first off, he did have to reorder some of the songs to make the story make more sense, had to add lyrics to the songs so that they could connect better. And so he had to shuffle the songs and then add lyrics, but he kind of had to. I feel like he had to lean into this weirdness of the album, because it's either make this weird concept story of this album of Tommy, a pinball wizard, a religious cult leader that is deaf and blind, and make that make sense, or lean into what they were trying to achieve, but also make it like make sense in a story structure, I guess. So I think he was just leaning into it with the stuff like the Marilyn Monroe, and like one that stuck out to me the most was like when his mom is debating becoming wealthy over the price of what's happening with her son, and she's in this huge white room, and a bunch of crazy visual stuff is going on, especially with like beans. You get like a bean commercial for a little bit, and then it like fills the room, and she's swimming in beans.
Okay,
that was so
I think
weird.
I think the Who have an obsession with beans, because I was looking through their albums, and one of their albums covers has like a giant can of like Heinz beans on it. And there was like that song that was just a random like, I was like, oh, we're having a commercial, I guess, in the middle of this movie
with Barbara Streisand.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, so before we even get to that, at the beginning of that scene where she's in the room, well, actually, this is after Tommy wins the pinball tournament against Elton John. She like is talking to him like trying to like figure out what he wants, you know, and like she wants him to like know that she loves him and stuff like that. But it shows her like looking at the wall of the mirror, right? Because he's just looking at the mirror the whole time. She's trying to figure him out. Then she turns around and she starts flailing her arms like this for like 10 seconds. And that's when I was laughing so hard. I was like, I really don't want to wake up my roommate right now, but I cannot contain myself. But she just kept doing it, and then she gets all serious. But that was just my 2 cents from that whole environment.
Yeah.
But going back to when she throws the champagne bottle at the TV, and then all this foam comes out, like it's crazy amounts, and then beans comes out, and then chocolate comes out, all in this white room, and she's just like hallucinating. Yeah, it's so weird.
I bet that was a fun scene to film, though. Like, have this pristine white room and then just fill it with beans and chocolates.
Well,
Yeah, it feels so weird though, like saying like, man, this movie's weird, because like it's obviously trying to be, but at the same time, like it still like defies expectation and explanation. Because yeah, like what do beans have to do with the song or even like the concept of like what's going on? And I'm sure somebody's like, have some sort of film theory about like, well, the beans actually represent like the royalty in the commercial, and that she feels entitled to wealth, and like her son, like I'm sure someone's trying to figure it out, but it's really just it's trying to be crazy, and it either works for you, it doesn't.
Well, here was my take on it. So, of course, she's drinking champagne, and she's probably drunk. Never mind, because she drank the whole bottle. And she throws the bottle at the TV, and that's when things shift, where you get all this crazy amounts of food and foam and chocolate. But what I'm thinking is that she was watching commercials, right? And the one that we see the whole thing is the beans commercial, Rex's beans. And I'm guessing is that she was just hallucinating, thinking that she had all this. Well, the first thing she has is the foam, right? That's from the champagne. Then she gets beans, because that's the last thing that she saw in the commercial that we fully watched. And the chocolate, I have no idea where that came from. I hope it's chocolate.
So there was like remember when she's like trying to like switch away from Tommy, like on the TV?
Yeah.
It kept switching to a chocolate commercial.
Okay, so I think that's where the mixture comes in then. Because then her husband, or her Uncle Frank, or, he walks in and she just passed on the floor. There's nothing wrong with the room aside from the champagne bottle sticking out of the TV that she was watching. Yeah. So that might have been that take, but it's so weird because then she like straddles like a pillow, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's when my wife walked in and she's like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "I honestly don't know."
Yeah. How well did like the story work for you guys? Obviously, it's got, considering the limitations that the filmmakers had with making a narrative feature out of a concept album, how well do you think the story was translated to the screen?
Okay, so I didn't have all of this context beforehand.
Me neither.
I didn't know that it was just an album, like, turned into a story. I thought all the music was written for this movie.
Oh gosh.
Until you guys said otherwise. And so with that perspective, I feel like they kind of went with their own interpretation, which is like what you can't, like the only thing you can do in that circumstance. And I feel like they achieved what they were going for. It was weird, it was wacky, but it was also trying to tell a cohesive story the best they could out of a weird album. And I think with that, I think it accomplished what it was setting out to do. Personally, I don't think I liked it as a film, but A for effort.
I was gonna say I was in the same boat as Spencer. I didn't know that this was originally an album that was adapted into a movie. I think it's typically when we're on a podcast and we're explaining films, giving a synopsis, we can give just way more than a sentence of what happens in the plot. But this one is just so wild. It goes on a different tangent every now and then, but you can still understand the storyline and the plot of what's going on. I cannot explain it verbally though through this because it's so wild. But I think this is somewhat like it's like when directors take a film and they make it inspired by a book, how they take their own interpretations of it sometimes and fans don't like it. This one, they have to fill in the gaps between different songs of an album. And in order to do that, they have to have their own creative juices flowing. And I think they did an okay job at it because I wasn't lost, but it was weird.
Just real quick with what TK is saying, or what he said, like, if it feels like we're not really describing what happens in the movie, or that we're like glossing over important plot details, we're honestly not really, because basically the premise of the movie is what happens in the movie. So like, you know, it's about a deaf, dumb, and blind kid who grows up, becomes a pinball, you know, champion, and then after regaining his senses becomes a cult leader, and then the movie ends. So like, you know, we're not really leaving anything out.
And if that didn't make any sense, go watch the movie and you'll understand.
Or you know what, just listen to the album and, you know, you'll get a better version of the songs, but then you'll still understand the story.
Honestly, and if you do listen to the album, like, try and put yourself in Ken Russell's shoes and try to make your own storyline and how you can make it all connect without making it too weird.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to see that.
Yeah.
And giving an honor to the album of, this is experimental and weird. How can I create a story with it, and how can I lean into that?
Mm-hmm.
And that, so it's like, I don't even feel like we're like rating a movie. It just feels like a, I don't know, like
It's an experiment.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's an art project. Like, how do you rate experimental art? It's kind of it's a similar feeling to how I've felt after watching David Lynch's Eraserhead. It's like, I don't know how to like quantify my thoughts on this, because what I experienced was just so bizarre and doesn't really fit into any category of things that I've seen, that it's hard to really like describe. And that's why I'm like trying to think of it in like breaking it apart into like its different components so we can actually have a discussion. But like with the story, and like, again, I totally agree with what everyone's saying, where it's like Ken Russell was, you know, his job was pretty hard to like turn this album into a compelling story. And I guess what I have to add to what has already been said is maybe that was a futile effort to begin with. Because I'll have to say that, at least for myself, like the story that the album / film tells of Tommy isn't all that compelling to me. And I think that there are a lot of very weird decisions with regard to plot points, like the cousin and the uncle that babysit him and just like abuse him. And like, there's just a bunch of weird stuff that has to happen because it happens in the album. But that for a narrative film don't really make sense. And so like, I think that the filmmakers did a pretty good job with what they were given, but that, you know, I don't think that there is a way that this movie could have conveyed this story in a way that would feel as narratively satisfying as like a regular movie that wasn't based on a concept album.
I agree. I think their approach just made sense for this movie. They weren't going to make a compelling story. I think I would like to know Ken Russell's take on this, but I think his main goal is just to create an experience, like a visual experience for this already crazy album, you know? Yeah. And I think he did just that, for me, I think this was impressive. For them to make this, it's not necessarily something I would go back to and like recommend, but like at an effort level of trying to take Tommy as an album and put it into an hour and 51-minute movie that felt like 4 at times, like just,
oh gosh, yes,
yeah. I applaud the craftsmanship for this movie and some like the visuals that they imported, or like, why did we have the cast that we did? It didn't really matter, but you know, I did really. I can't even say I liked it. You know, it's like I like what they did. You know, I don't know.
We can at least appreciate what they were trying to do.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we can just wrap it here. Honestly, there's not really much we can say. You just have to see it for yourself to understand what we're trying to convey with what we've seen. But we can just go around and give our ratings for this film.
Inadequate as a number might be to express how we feel about this film.
Okay, I guess I'll start it off. I out of 5, I would give it a 2.5. I'm not saying it's a terrible film. It's not one that I can see myself watching a lot. I don't think it's a masterpiece. But like we were saying, I appreciate the things that were given to Ken Russell and how he was able to, make it into a movie and kind of convey his thoughts on how he thinks things should have played out throughout the film. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I'll have to agree a little bit with you with your rating. I'm saying around like a 2.5, like a 5 or a 6
out of 10,
but not like a not looking at it at like as a movie. So I would give it probably like a 3 out of 5. 6 as like this was good. On a scale of a personal watching this movie again, I won't come back to this, but I am glad I saw this weird blip in movie history where they were making visual experiences for weird concept albums. So I think Ken Russell gave a great take on it for a weird movie or a weird album and gave us a weird movie. And yeah, so probably a 3 out of 5.
All right, I think I appreciate the efforts of the crew and the director of trying to create this experience, but I feel like that's as far as my enjoyment goes, is just appreciation. And so I think I'm gonna give it like a lower rating, probably like a 1.5. And I feel like that might be even generous. I'll stick to 1.5 because I really do appreciate that, because I'm like thinking in my head like feel like it's be somebody trying to make a movie out of like a popular song or something, like Bohemian Rhapsody comes to mind. Like try making a movie about that or something, like, yeah. Because everybody has their own interpretation of that song and it's always going to be different. But what was given was their own interpretation, and that I can respect. So 1.5.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning toward like Jared's thoughts. This isn't something that I'd watch again. I guess I can kind of say that I'm glad that I watched it. At some parts, I wasn't feeling that way as much. But yeah, I think that for what the movie is and what it sets out to do, I think that it succeeds at least minimally at its concept and its like whole conceit. And so I think I'd give it probably like Jared. I'd probably give it 6 out of 10, 3 out of 5. It's closer to a 5 out of 10 than a 7. Yeah. But yeah, it's hard. It's a movie that almost defies rating because you just kind of watch it and that's
you stumble into a dark alley and think about life a little.
Yeah. Okay, well that was the movie that was recommended for this episode, and of course we have another recommendation coming your way, and this one's going to be from David.
All right, so Star Wars was released in 1977, and the movie revolutionized so many things, the way that we think about visual effects and film genres and all sorts of things. It was a pioneer in many different ways, and it spawned countless sequels. Well, the movie that I want us to talk about comes from 1976, a year before that, and it's another sci-fi movie called Logan's Run. I know next to nothing about this film. Other than that, it's a 70s sci-fi, and the poster on Letterboxd looks absolutely amazing. It's kind of popped up here and there, and when I'm like looking around for things. So it is directed by Michael Anderson, and I don't know him from anything else. He directed a Around the World in 80 Days adaptation in the 50s, and apart from that, I don't recognize anything else in his filmography. So this is pretty much going in blind, but I think it'll be an interesting watch and hopefully an interesting conversation.
All right, if you guys want to be prepared for the next episode, be sure to watch Michael Anderson's Logan's Run before so. And until then, I guess we'll see you guys. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.